Okay, moving on to the next team in the Pac-12 that we will be going over today. That would be Larry Kostoiak and his Utah Utes, and I totally understand. If you're listening to this podcast, odds are you're going to say, wow, Zach, you have Utah as the number 5 team in the Pac-12, and I admit this is a surprise. I do realize that I'm going to be one of the only people in college basketball that has this Utah team so high, but at the same time, I think looking at this Utah team, they do return a lot of talent that I think in this year's Pac-12 could lead them to a pretty good season. Timmy Allen is one of the more underrated players in the country. The 6'7" junior averaged 17.3 points per game last year, 7.3 rebounds per game last year, and 3 assists. They also will bring back their starting point guard, Rylan Jones, the 6'1 sophomore. He averaged 10, 3, and 4. And they bring back Alonzo Plummer, who, if you remember, Utah actually played in a game during the Pac-12 tournament last year, right before the season got shut down. And this kid, Alfonso Plummer, he hit 11 threes in a Pac-12 tournament game against Oregon State. And I remember watching that game, and I was like, yo, this kid is a sniper, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what he's able to do next year. And I do think that's a really good start for Larry Kostoiak and this Utah team that, let's face it, they've struggled over the last couple years. If you're a Utah fan, your goal each and every year should be to make the NCAA tournament. I think when you're at a school like Utah, that is an appropriate measuring stick to evaluate your coach by. And I think this Utah team, I don't know if they're a tournament team, but I do think this Utah team is going to be their best team over the last 3 or 4 years, definitely since Kyle Kuzma left to go to the NBA. And I think that's another thing why a lot of people ask me, right, Zach, when I look at who are the highest paid coaches in all of college basketball, Larry Kostoiak's name is at the top of that list. And sometimes there are a lot of people that ask me, how is this guy at the top of the list when his program hasn't really won that much over the last couple of years? And I do admit, if you're a Utah fan, I do think that with the amount of money your coach is making, you should be winning a decent amount of games each and every year. I'll give you the exact number right now. When you look at Larry Kostoiak's salary, he's making right now about $3.39 million per year, which is the second highest paid coach in the Pac-12 behind Sean Miller. So they're paying him a lot of money. I'm curious to see what exactly he does this season, because I do feel like when you're a team that Utah is in this situation, right, and you're paying your coach a lot of money, I see, and this is just me, the casual college basketball fan sitting on my couch, I think that this Utah team has some potential with Jones and Plummer and Allen, Jantanen, Riley Batten, their top big man, they return as well, and a kid in Brandon Carlson who was phenomenal down the stretch last year, and that was as a freshman. And this is a very young team, I get it, but I do think that a lot of these guys played together last year, and I do think ultimately that is really going to help this Utah team. And it's funny because there were a lot of people kind of on this same Utah bandwagon with me going into the season, but it hit a few headwinds this summer when Booth Gotch boomeranged back home to Minnesota, and a fringe top 100 recruit, Caleb Lohner, asked for a release of his letter of intent, and he actually ended up in BYU, which if you're a Utah fan, you never want to be out here losing players to BYU. But Booth Gotch was one of the main reasons why Utah beat Kentucky last year. He balled out in that game. And I remember watching that game saying to myself, wow, I think this Utah team is going to be really good next year. And even without Booth Gotch, I still think they are. I think that Utah is going to be in a lot of close games this year because they like to score a lot, they like to shoot a lot, and they have a lot of feast or famine players, including Plummer, their top shooter that I mentioned earlier. And the other thing about this Utah team is this. They have a lot of guys that are still young and haven't even hit their potential yet. Timmy Allen is going to be one of the better players in the Pac-12 this season. I think he's good enough to be a legitimate best player for a really good team, and I think with him, the third year for him in the program, that's going to be a really good sign for this Utah team going forward. The other kid that here in around Utah that a lot of people like is Ian Martinez. And him, along with Pele Larson, are the notable newcomers to watch out for this season, but their path toward immediate playing time could be deterred by just a bunch of other really good players in this rotation. But one thing I'll say about Ian Martinez is this. He is going to play this season, and I think he's going to make a significant impact. His dad is actually on the Utah coaching staff, but he's a long, wiry combo guard who can create his own looks and really elevate over shorter defenders for tough shots. The Utah Utes really struggled last year to initiate offense, especially late in the shot clock, and I do think that is going to be something that right away Ian Martinez will be able to help them with. And with Utah, Larry Kostowiak and his track record typically deserves the benefit of the doubt, but I do, once again, totally understand why Utah fans have been growing a little impatient. They haven't made the tournament in 4 years, and you look at it from one aspect and you could just say to yourself, all right, we're a really good team, we're a good program, and we haven't made the tournament, that's all coaching. But to be honest, if you're a real Utah fan and you look at the situation much closer, I don't think Larry Kostowiak is that much responsible for the blame. Because let's face facts. This Utah team, at one point not so long ago, had 3 NBA players. DeLon Wright, Kyle Kuzma, and Jakob Poeltl. And it's funny because most Utah fans, and I'm going to assume that this was the case with their coaching staff as well, most people around that Utah basketball program did not expect Jakob Poeltl to be this good this quickly. And ultimately, that's why he ended up going into the NBA draft. And let me just ask you guys this. For any program in college basketball, it could be a Duke, it could be a UNC, it could be a Kentucky. If you're losing 3 guys early in a span of 4 years to the NBA, then that's going to hit any program hard. That's going to hit Virginia hard. That's going to hit Duke hard, Louisville, let alone Utah. So I do think that Utah fans could cut Larry Kostowiak some slack considering all the talent he's lost over the last couple of years, especially early. But this is a big year for him, and it's a big year for his squad because I really want to see this team improve because I think with all of the returning talent that is here, there's a really solid core. And when you look at the Pac-12, a lot of times in this conference, there's NBA talent brought in that goes one and done, and the schools are kind of just like a mess. That's happened at USC before. That's happened at UCLA before. But I do think with this young group of guys that this Utah Ute team does have, I wouldn't be shocked if for the next 2-3 years, Larry Kostowiak really has this program up and running again. He's proven he could do it before. He had a really good run in a 3 or 4 year stretch when they had not only those NBA guys I mentioned, but also Jordan Loveridge and Brandon Taylor. Those guys were very fun to watch. So I am curious to see what exactly Utah could do this season, and I'm going to be higher on them than most. Most people are going to think I'm crazy for having them over Arizona and USC and Colorado. But when I look at this Utah team, I think they're the 5th. I see them as the 5th best team in the Pac-12, and that is why I have them at number 5.